Great. We are back with the budget discussions for fiscal year 2018. We have before us Steve Bland. We're going to talk about the Metro Transit Authority right now. Steve, before I turn it over to you to introduce the folks that you brought with you and anybody also in the back that you would like to include, I just want to remind the viewers at home of one thing. We know that we are going to hear more requests for funds over the next several coming days than we actually have available revenue. So at the end of these discussions, we will be working to identify the most efficient and effective use of the dollar revenues that we have based on the requests that we've received. Again, just reiterating that we know we're going to have a lot more requests for money than we have dollars. So not that that is it. I'm saying this to everybody, Steve, so it's fine. So please, Steve, take a moment and introduce the folks that you have with you and then also the folks in the back who are with you.
Thank you, Mayor Barry.
Absolutely.
And if anybody appreciates that comment, it would be the MTA. So we know it's a big ask. Sitting to my left is our Chief Financial Officer, Ed Oliphant. Sitting to my immediate right is our Board Chair, Gail Carr-Williams. To her right, our Board Vice Chair, Louis Levine. In the back, we have our General Counsel, Margaret Bem. Prospective board member who's up for nomination to the Metro Council next week, Hannah Paramore, and a couple of additional staff that we've brought along with us. So we're prepared to speak to you about our request.
Great, and let me also just highlight that we have two council members who have joined us as well. We have Council Member Cooper and Council Member Vercher, Budget Chair, Budget Vice Chair, so they are here with us as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Steve, to just start the conversation about what you're asking for.
Sure.
And what your request is, both from an operating and from a capital budget request, and then if we've got questions, we'll follow back up. So it's over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the priority that you've placed on mobility improvements for all Nashvillians. So you have certainly what I'll call goosed the MTA into making a number of requests and stepping things up. For the current fiscal year, the MTA's operating budget is a total of $76.7 million. And in some of our conversation, we'll also loop in the Regional Transportation Authority
Sure.
that Metro Nashville participates with a number of other cities and counties. The RTA operating budget is $9.9 million, and the total combined capital budget between the two is about $46 million. So of that $86.6 million total operating in capital, Metro has appropriated about $43.8 million in operating assistance and $20 million in capital support. Our requests are based off of the 25-year in-motion strategic service plan that was adopted by both the RTA and MTA boards this past August, was adopted unanimously. And while much of the attention was placed on the $6 billion capital price tag, over that 25-year period, there was also a projection that operating expenses would go up in current year dollars to about $338 million. Thanks to your leadership and that of the Regional Mayor's Caucus, the discussions on how that gets funded, provisions to make long-term sustainable funding possible are well underway. The MTA and its board has heard loud and clear your direction to move as quickly as possible toward the mobility future that Nashvillians will need and that they deserve. And in that vein, our full budget request to Metro amounts to a requested increase of about $10.2 million, or 23% for operating assistance, and an increase of about $85.39 million for capital, which is a 427% increase. And I remember...
Just say that again.
Talia would rather I not. The increase on about a $43 million current operating allocation is about $10.2 million, so 23%. And for capital, an increase on $20 million of $85.39 million, or 427%. I'd let the members who are here speak to this as well, but the MTA board took really, I think, unprecedented interest and ownership in preparing the request for this year. And in doing so, they debated, discussed, and developed what we called 4 tiers of funding priority. And that's how we've broken down the request to Metro this year. Tier 1 is considered, they aren't necessarily priorities 1 through 4. They give, frankly, Metro some options as to different approaches that we might take. Tier 1 is funding that's necessary to sustain core services, so it's essentially sustaining that day-to-day mission. Tier 2 are those short-term initiatives where the riding public, the general public, could see really immediate short-term benefit within the fiscal year that we're asking for the allocation. Tier 3 initiatives are shorter term but do require a little bit more lead time. And then Tier 4 activities are the support, planning, design, engineering for those long-term improvements identified in motion. The proposal's been formulated in a way that is scalable, so recognizing that there will be many demands on Metro's budget and many different priorities that you and the council will want to pursue. Certainly, this is not an all-or-nothing approach, and we hope that today is the start of a conversation as to how we may prioritize our services and our initiatives.
So let's start with the Tier 1 request, which I think is the $2 million request, which I think is just an across-the-board request to continue existing core services. So for the viewers at home, $2 million sounds like a lot of money for just to maintain. So talk to me about what that $2 million goes for just the continuing
Sure.
Services.
On a baseline, it's essentially an inflationary level increase in all of the MTA budget, but like anything else, that rather relatively smooth overall increase. There's a few things going on under the surface. We're anticipating flat funding from TDOT, small increase in our federal allocation. So our other revenue sources are relatively flat. Most of the cost increases come through collectively bargained wage increases for our bargaining unit employees of about 2.7%. Seeing some increases in health insurance, and after several years of decline, we're actually seeing fuel prices edge up some, and fuel is a significant line item in the MTA budget. They're still lower than historical norms, but we had seen such unprecedented low prices that they're up compared to the past couple of years. A couple of they're lesser items, but they're noteworthy. Since we've had our vehicle location system, our real-time information system in place for some time, that hardware software is coming out of warranty, so ongoing service and licensing fees kick into this budget. And then some of the others are we've seen kind of a low-level decrease in ridership recently for a variety of reasons, some having to do with fuel prices on commuter routes. Certainly, we believe that Uber and Lyft have had an impact. Some of our settlement patterns here in the city have had an impact, and that's had a small impact on fare revenue. But on the converse side, we've seen a pretty large increase in our advertising income.
So, okay, all right. So that's the Tier 1 would kind of with the baseline of $2 million. I think the Tier 2, which is you were talking about, which were those short-term initiatives for the budget, which looks like it's a dollar amount of close to 3.7. That would be in addition to the 2, right? So this is so 3.7. Talk to me about what that does as far as an additional 3.7 million.
Sure. On the Tier 2, probably the largest components are one of the things called for in the in-motion plan over time were an expansion in the span of our core services. Out of about 46 individual routes in the MTA system, 14 of those routes carry about 70% of our total ridership. So they had been identified through the in-motion plan for increases in both span of service, how early and late they operate, both weekday and weekend, as well as frequency of service. So a large chunk of this would go toward improving the span, how late we operate, how early we operate, weekdays and weekends on those 14 core service routes. They also start to address one of the issues that we heard loud and clear, and I know was an issue of interest to you through the in-motion process, was the practice we now have where about 12 years ago the MTA reduced its fares but eliminated free transfers. So this would also reinstitute a policy of free transfers and would account for, frankly, the revenue shortfall that come along with that. Then there are some other, what I'll call less obvious things we think very important. Moving to a zero defect initiative on our fleet to significantly reduce, particularly a lot of our body and appearance issues, particularly through the hiring of additional body technicians. what we're calling a service reliability initiative, which is frankly using more analytics and more real-time service intervention with the real-time information that we're getting on delays and how we can restore delays to on-time service much more quickly, and then getting more proactive and taking more of a safety management systems approach as opposed to just an investigate and correct type of approach in our safety systems and programs.
And let me be clear, because I think it's, I mentioned that it was a $3.7 million request, but I think it's actually more than that, because to include the span would take that up to a $4.5 million request, correct?
That is,
It's 4.5 plus the 3, so it's really, it's closer to 8 or 9 million, correct?
It's the bulk, it's the rest of the 10 million. other than the 2 million.
that's it, exactly correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have it as about 8.28.
Right. Right, but that doesn't get to the 12 million.
If you want to go to tier 4, we probably recommend that we don't do that this year, if that makes you feel better.
So, Steve, I do want to just go back and highlight the penalty for transfers, the 2.7 million. You and I have had a lot of conversation about this, the fact that the folks who are riding our bus system are people then who have to come down and make a transfer, and that what you end up doing is having to pay twice. So eliminating that would be about a $2.7 million reduction in revenue that we would see, but that would actually help our low-income
Oh, yeah, no
riders
doubt.
to be able to get where they need to go.
Right. If I could actually embellish on that just a little
Please.
bit, it's that income piece. The other piece, that process 12 years ago was initially put in to help reduce, that procedure was put in place concurrent with the introduction of a day pass. And one of the goals is to get as many folks paying with non-cash media as possible. It helps speed up boarding, it simplifies, and it reduces administrative cost. So the two pieces of this request are both reinstituting the free transfer and then also doing a what I'll call a commensurate prorating of our multi-trip media so that we don't reduce the incentive for people to buy day passes or weekly passes or multiple trip tickets.
Okay. Okay.
The biggest item on here is to extend the frequency of that operation. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, let's
Correct.
talk about that.
About 14 routes in the system, again, that currently carry about 70% of our ridership. And currently the system, depending on day of week, starts up about 5:30 in the morning, goes most routes till 11, some till midnight. This would take us to the 4 to 4:30 a.m. to 1 o'clock, 1:30 a.m. So it would basically take us to about a 20-hour day system.
I've seen some projections, which I think will be helpful for us to talk about when you extend this and you do this. What kind of a ridership increase are we talking about?
Frankly, the late night service isn't the most productive. It's more of what we would call a lifeline service, where we get folks who are now having to, say, turn down after-hour shifts, or they're having to take a more expensive method of travel back and forth. So from a ridership perspective, frankly, we would project about 5 passengers per an hour, which is a little bit less than a quarter of our system-wide average. Again, one of the things in the Tier 2 requests was what can be done short-term. So we're not, frankly, prioritizing this in order of, this is what would carry the most ridership. Some of those require some of the related infrastructure improvements that come in the Tier 3 and 4.
So 5 passengers per hour.
Yeah, and our current system average is around 21, and some routes, for instance, the Gallatin Road, well over 40.
All right. Talia. Got some questions?
I want to go back to your revenue. Because I think for the past few years when you've come in and you've made presentations, the assumption has always been that the revenue through TDOT was going to be flat. That's been kind of the working assumption. What has been the actual revenue trend that you've seen over the past few years from TDOT? I don't know if their revenue is dropping or increasing or whatever.
Yeah, I can't speak to their overall revenues. Their allocations to mass transit and the operators have essentially been flat over the past, probably, 3 years? And that, frankly, pending ongoing discussion right now with the Governor's Improved Act is frankly what we've assumed. We haven't been given any indication that there'd be a reduction, but I think any increase would be
They've not given you any
dependent.
kind of a CPI, just absolutely,
They do it in about 3-year chunks.
okay.
We ask every year, but we don't seem to be able to get any increase out of them, so. It has been stable at about $4.65 million for the past 3 years, though.
Okay. And what about on the federal, through your federal money?
The federal is based on preventive maintenance. If we use our formula, our capital formula funding, 5307, that can be converted over to operating. We do that based on what our maintenance costs are and things like that. It's a fine line to balance that, because you obviously want to have capital dollars to do our ongoing projects and also sustain the operating budget. And I typically have that follow the same lines of a 1%, 2%, or 3% increase over year for inflationary things and increased wages and things like that can be covered with these dollars.
I mean, the only reason I ask that is because I think if you did a trend line in terms of your revenue, those would be flat and very little change, and you would see from Metro significant
Right.
bumps
No question. No
in terms
question.
of support that the city has provided.
No doubt about that.
And I think that that's just important for people to understand. The city has really stepped up
Oh,
and made
absolutely.
significant investments in transit.
On both, frankly, the capital and the operating side, so there's no question about that.
That's one reason that either the part of the Improve Act or the separate act in terms of local option are so important.
Let's take a moment and
because-
talk about that.
Sure.
For the viewers at home, because I think that is critical.
Yeah, because we don't think that it's going to change in terms of state or federal funding.
Right.
And so the community is going to have to make a decision. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, absolutely. So, for those folks who are watching at home, Louis, there's a couple of legislative proposals before the state legislature. One is Governor Haslam's Improve Act, which would take the gas fee revenue up by 7 cents for, I think I've heard the governor say it equates to about $40 a year for an average family. That would, my understanding, would bring about $1.4 billion to Davidson County for infrastructure upgrades over several years, including, but notwithstanding, paving 440. Paving 440. The other component is the local option, which would allow communities like Davidson County to go out for vote with a referendum to identify a revenue source, tie it specifically to a project, and then have the voters decide. Both of these are really critical when we think about the ongoing funding and upgrades for our transit in Davidson County. So if you're listening, feel free to call your state legislator and say how excited you would be to have them support this legislation. And because you're right, the state funding, the federal funding, we can only anticipate that it's not going to increase. It's probably just going to stay flat.
There have been early conversations at the federal level at a long-term, large infrastructure investment program, but frankly, it's a little early to understand exactly what that means.
And we'd like to have a piece of that, too.
The impact, the importance of that gets hit if you look at the 3-year budgeting. I mean, just forget we got to worry about this year. But if you're looking a little long-term, I mean, as I look at this, for the proposal, I mean, you've asked for a $10 billion increase this fiscal year. And if you look at what, I don't know, it's hard to project, but a little bit looking in 19, it looks like it's another $16 million increase in just operating numbers. So, and that's to increase the routes, crosstown routes, and the frequency. Those are the two key components of in motion to get the service. So you're not just, I mean, you got to really think about this in a bigger picture than just year to year, but each of these steps has corresponding impact going forward. And, you know, and we joked earlier about, you know, Senator Dirksen, $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon it's real money. But I mean, you're talking, you know, another $16 million increase, you know, and as Talia pointed out, the subsidy number has gone up significantly, kind of over 50% in the last
doubt.
5-6 years. And so we're seeing that.
Gail and I have been at this a long time. We really appreciate what Metro has done over the last decade, which has transformed the system. But we also proposed a $6 billion long-term plan, and you know, even a small part at a time takes a while. And as the mayor said, it's probably a community decision. It's not a state or a federal decision.
All the discussion during the in-motion process with over 20,000 engagements was that for something of this breadth, which was overwhelmingly, that's what the public that engaged wanted to see, would require a new way to fund it, a permanent, long-term funding approach. And certainly we've been struck by the support of the community to try to put that forward. But literally, there is no city in the country trying to do what In-Motion would have us do that doesn't have that separate, you know, kind of dedicated piece.
You have to have a dedicated revenue stream.
So a question, we obviously the In-Motion plan is $6 billion or whatever the number is. And obviously it talks about a number of, you know, light rail lines and other services on that. And here, what you've proposed for fiscal 19, some improvements in 18 with the late hours, and in 19 being the frequency of the service and the crosstown routes. Help me understand, and maybe others, how that's a critical step towards a complete mass transit plan, the light rail and system and all that. Because clearly you know, light rail is a little more higher appeal or curb appeal than increasing buses. But why is increasing the bus service so critical?
Sure. Well, there are a few elements to drawing what I would call radical increases in ridership. The hard infrastructure, Rich, that you're talking about, like light rail or high-end bus rapid transit or commuter rail, tend to be lengthier processes, particularly with federal participation because of design, planning, environmental impact work. And that's generally what is in the Tier 4 level requests, is what I'll call the advance work to start moving those projects forward. But even any of those projects are going to rely on, you know, there's a certain amount of, for lack of a better word, sex appeal or novelty to that high-end capital. But if it's not accompanied by the frequency, the convenience, frankly, a lot of the other things that Metro's talking about in the walk-bike plan, you know, the pedestrian access to stations and facilities, the ability to cross some of our busiest corridors safely is very important. That span. So when we look at a rider market, we look at, you know, kind of that weakest link in the chain. You know, what is it that's going to prevent someone from riding? So is it that I can't walk to the bus stop because there's a lack of a sidewalk? Is it that the service, whether it's bus or rail, doesn't run late enough for me or not frequent enough for me? So again, these were sort of arranged as what can be done quickly, what might take a little bit more time. Span is easiest because we already have the fleet to do that. Any of the bus improvements obviously are shorter term because we have the internal capacity. Rail takes a bit of a longer time to, you know, frankly deal with the environmental design. And there are neighborhood impacts. You know, the In-Motion process followed closely on the heels of Nashville Next. So embedded in that was an assumption that the preferred future as outlined in Nashville Next would ultimately come to be, you know, which is more density around some of our key corridors and clustering around centers and the type of things that were talked about in the Metro Comprehensive Plan.
I want to make sure we spend some time talking about your capital requests, particularly for FY, if you would focus a little bit on 18. I think what I'm reading here, if I'm reading it correctly, it's for Tier 1, 30 million?
30,580,000.
To be specific.
Give or take.
Could you just speak to, at a real high level, what that would cover, please?
Sure. The first of all, it covers MTA-RTA, helps cover MTA-RTA grant matches. Most of our grant programs, particularly capital, come with a match requirement, and typically that's been 10% Metro, 10% state. Biggest chunk of the program is in standard fleet replacement. $14.2 million of that $30.58 million would go toward the replacement of our heavy-duty transit coaches. And more recently, because of the the city's sustainability goals, we've been going with hybrid electric powered equipment, which is both more fuel efficient, lower emission, but it is a higher upfront capital cost for a lower long-term operating cost. About $2,280,000 toward the replacement of our lighter duty vehicles, the Access Ride vans, so 15 of those. And then what we want to kick off as part of our long-term maintenance program is a midlife rehab program on some of our buses that will allow us, frankly, to extend the life out. Historically, we've been replacing them at 12 years. That's the useful life of a bus. With the midlife overhaul program, we hope to accomplish two things. Number one, to be able to extend the life, to lower that overall replacement cost over the life cycle of a bus, but frankly, to also flatten some of our replacement cycles so that whether it's Metro or any of the other funding sources, it's more of a level piece. Coming back to Yale and Lewis's origins, and they can speak to this better than I can, it was originally under Mayor Purcell that there started to be, huge improvements in transit, and that was in one fell swoop. We bought a whole bunch of new buses. So we kind of have these replacement cycles that peak out, and the overhaul program can help us kind of smooth that replacement cycle out.
And again, that
But I get to be
30 million
the-
is just
Yeah.
tier one, just keeping
Just keeping it going.
Right. And it was actually fairly close to the request from last year that was largely funded by Metro. But it's even the infrastructure we have, while it may not be exactly up to what we want yet, it's still a pretty significant infrastructure.
And then tier two would add another 19 million.
Unfortunately, as you move toward more frequent service, you need more buses to do that. Longer span, you're okay, but more frequent service during the day, you need more buses.
Can you talk a minute about some of the proposal for TSU and the extension of the Music City circuit, as well as that transit campus on TSU and the revitalization of Jefferson Street?
So generally speaking, we're calling neighborhood transit centers, including the one that we're identifying for the TSU campus and neighborhood, was a very high priority recommendation in InMotion. And it's a couple things. First of all, the intent is to create, for lack of a better word, a multimodal center in a neighborhood, that it's not just where multiple bus routes would come together in a comfortable, well-lit, nice place to be. But frankly, as our mobility mix changes, whether that's taxi or it's Uber or it's Lyft or it's B-Cycle, that there are more options available to people, and sort of this is the hub of our neighborhood. And overall, InMotion identified about 23, proximate locations. Certainly North Nashville was identified for a couple. And the TSU vicinity, we've had some very good conversations to date with the administration at TSU. There's a significant amount of interest for them to get their students even better connectivity, to the rest of the city and the rest of the system. And obviously, it's an anchor in the Jefferson Street corridor, which continues to be, one of those 14 key corridor routes that we talk about.
But the site and all that hasn't been identified. Right?
No, we've been working with TSU, and there's probably 2 or 3 that could work very well. But we didn't want to put anything in writing until we knew we could pay for it.
And then the fare system. So we 3.8 million last year, another $11 million.
Yeah, this finishes it out.
It seems $11 million to fare. Explain kind of why is it that much?
First of all, it's full-scale replacement of all of the onboard equipment on the bus, and because of the secure nature and the cash transport mechanism aspects, those units are about $11,000 a piece on the what I'll call the city bus system. It's a lower level of investment on the Access Ride and some of the lower level shuttle systems. Significant amount of software, and at both our operating facilities, our our counting room, our vault evacuation areas. So they're designed to be ultra-secure systems, in addition to what I'll call the newer enhanced. So that's sort of what I'll call the legacy replacement system of a fare collection system that's going on, I think, 15 years old. Is that about right? 15 years old now, so we see some maintenance challenges and some parts availability challenges. And then layering on that are the enhancements like making it a full smart card system. So not just compatible. Right now we work with entities like Vanderbilt or Metro schools to enable their smart cards, but the ability to create, a system smart card, mobile payment mechanisms, all those sorts of things.
Have other cities gone to a cash-free system?
Not in the United States, not to my knowledge, in mass transit. I mean, there are, for instance, campus systems or what have you, because there's this general sense in the social equity realm of there's always going to be somebody, who needs to be able to use cash, whether that's they're unbanked, and don't have access to, for instance, a debit card or a credit card, or the convenience of getting to a smart card, that there are always people kind of entering the system. We would be required, really, in any of our fare policy considerations, we're required to do a Title VI analysis with the federal government. And that Title VI is the social equity piece to make sure that no investment we make is doing undue harm to disadvantaged populations. And generally speaking, anything that kind of moves away from cash doesn't score very well in that realm.
On the other hand, our slant is to try to get people to use data as much as possible because it speeds up
Sure.
the service.
And the other piece is a lot of the partnerships that we've been building and continue to build. I guess the poster child for this is the partnership with Metro Nashville Public Schools and the STRIDE program. Others working with Social Services and the Homeless Commission on the adverse weather card, that they have in distribution. So expanding on those partnerships, is really important to get that non-cash media into as many hands as possible.
Percentage of people who use cash, any idea?
Right now, I have a piece of paper buried in here, but off the top, it's about 40%.
Okay, so still a significant amount.
Yeah, still a significant amount of people. The challenge with some of the current, and what the system would allow us potentially to do if we adopt a structure like this, is what's referred to as best value pricing, where right now, to Lewis's point about the day pass, well, when I buy that, I have to make that financial decision. Am I going to ride the bus enough today to make that pay off for me? Am I going to ride the bus enough this month for a monthly pass? So many people still stick with cash because, frankly, their travel patterns are unpredictable. They're not sure what their frequency will be. Best value pricing on a smart card implies you don't have to decide that up front. You ride however often, and you automatically get whatever level of discount would have been most appropriate for you.
Got it.
I'm good.
Rich?
I don't know where to go next.
423%, 27%.
I know, say that one again.
And that doesn't even build a light rail line.
Doesn't even plan for the building of a light rail.
It starts.
As a board, we just tried to be responsive to the
No, we get
desire to make a difference.
I think you demonstrate, what this tells the community, very clearly, is that, it's choices. You got to make a decision on what you want. We can continue to run the system that we've run for decades with little adjustments here and there. And to do that, it's going to cost us X.
Right.
And if we want to move into a new age, but I think it's going to cost a lot more. But it really demonstrates that we can't do anything vastly beyond what we're currently doing without a dedicated stream of revenue.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
I've never, and it's so clear now.
But that also leads us, if the legislature gives us the ability to do it, it leads us to convince the community to
That's right.
give us a long-term
Because it's gonna be-
funding source so that we don't have to do this every year.
Because it's going to be a referendum. People are going to have to vote on it.
Right.
And
support it.
they're not going to vote for it unless we make the
Right.
case that shows
Yep.
what they're going to
What
get.
the
And they have the
value is.
choice.
And if the community doesn't want to do it, then that's
know where
fine,
we are.
then we don't, yeah.
And speaking about community, I just want to thank the community for being part of the in-motion process.
Yeah.
Because I think the community's voice is what sort of leads us to this four-tier process today. And
Right.
it is sort of the community speaking about what their needs are in terms of transit. So I deeply appreciate that they engaged with us during this process. And sounds like they will continue to engage with us to improve transit
Certainly think
in
they
the
are.
area. So that's always a great thing, that this is a community effort.
Absolutely.
But do appreciate the efforts of all of you all to have us in here today and hear
Well, I think,
our
and
needs.
I know the mayor agrees, the staff, and the staff has a job to do, and they do their job, and I appreciate that very well. But the board, you don't get paid a lot of money to serve on this board, and I have seen this year even more involvement on the board's part in terms of getting this budget to a place where you know, the tiered budget, structuring it that way, and laying out the choices for the administration and for ultimately the community to say, what do we want to do? I think that's really important to start that process, and I think this is a great start towards that, and we'll see where we go.
Makes my job a lot easier, to be honest.
Yeah.
We also appreciate your initial comment about the infrastructure investment when you had the opportunity, and hopefully you'll
Continue to have those
continue to have those conversations.
Continue.
And on that topic, we ask everybody to just bear with us on Wednesday.
So the viewers at home, will you please just go ahead, Steve, quickly, just quickly and say what the plan is on Tuesday or Wednesday for folks who do ride the bus on a regular basis, and that would be this Wednesday, the 15th of March. So
Correct.
I know that this program replays itself, but this is for March 15th, Wednesday,
Right.
Steve.
So if you're watching this after March 15th, don't pay attention to
Just
anything I
disregard.
say. But this coming Wednesday, March 15th, President Trump will be in town, and he will actually be at the Municipal Auditorium, which is dead next door to Music City Central, our main transit hub. And as part of their security considerations, the Secret Service has deemed that that facility has to be closed for the duration. We don't know of a final timing yet. The most recent we've heard is from 10 a.m. through the end of our service day, which is after midnight. It will be closed, including to folks who park there.
I think that's-
State employees who want to know,
Correct.
what about, we parked there?
You're correct.
But I know the answer, so I know.
No parking will be allowed after the close of business on Tuesday. And we are this close. We expect to be issuing a formal plan announcement. We were looking at several alternate sites. There will be an alternate location for that transfer activity. But frankly, we just need to dot a couple of I's, cross a couple of T's with the adjacent owners, property owners. We do expect to make a formal announcement late this afternoon, and we'll be notifying all of our riders via loudspeaker announcements tomorrow, handouts, obviously the traditional social and traditional media outlets of what that plan is, but we'll run a full service day. But we do expect disruptions, we expect rolling closures, and we expect some significant delays.
Well, I think it's important, first of all, to remind the viewers that we will run bus services.
Correct.
That the MCC will be closed after a certain time, but bus services will run, but you can expect delays, potentially significant delays.
So if I could make a pitch for projects, the more neighborhood transit centers we have and the more, what I'll call decentralized our
I think
network.
we've used up our time.
Which we will not have before Wednesday. But appreciate that there are more effective and efficient ways to
Yeah.
potentially to run buses. And second, to reiterate your comment that this is done based at the request of the Secret Service. This is not something that Metro makes the decision. Secret
Correct.
Service decides what the safety zone is, and they've
By
decided.
the way, I'm
that-
not sure I'd use the term request.
I was going to say that the decision was made that this includes the safety zone. So to make sure that the president is safe, this is one of the things that will happen and has to happen at the request of the federal government.
And in answer to that, I'd also like to publicly thank you, your office, Metro Police, Metro Public Works, a number of other Metro entities that essentially, when I call them, were, how can we help? So really appreciate the level of collaboration on this.
Well, our goal is to keep as many people moving around Nashville as possible without significant disruptions and delays, and we appreciate everybody's patience. So, thank you. Anything else? No. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.